All right, we're going to start. Hi. I'm wearing my favorite coat. Okay.
We don't have a bar, by the way.
We don't.
We don't.
We absolutely do not. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to see everybody here today. We're going to dive right into our stated agenda. First, we'll vote on the following land use items. 1720 Atlantic Avenue rezoning, a private rezoning application that will facilitate the development of approximately 300 new homes in 2 new buildings, over 100 of which will be affordable, as well as commercial and community facility space in Councilmember Chiosei's district. The council is modifying the application to require MIH option 3 deep affordability. 2 applications by the Department of Parks and Recreation for walk to park site selections to facilitate the creation of new parkland in the Brooklyn districts of Council Members Sandy Nurse and Chris Banks. The application will facilitate site selection and acquisition of 23 privately owned properties, and in the Queens districts of Council Members Francisco Moya, Tiffany Caban, and Shekhar Krishnan, the application will facilitate the selection and acquisition of 22 privately owned properties. Next, we'll vote on the following finance items. Preconsidered resolution sponsored by Councilmember Justin Brannan would establish a new 40-year Article 11 tax exemption for 2 buildings in Councilmember Carmen De La Rosa's district. Preconsidered resolution sponsored by Councilmember Brannan would establish a new 40-year Article 11 tax exemption for a 6-story building in Councilmember Abreu's district. Preconsidered resolution sponsored by Councilmember Brannan would establish a new 5-year Article 11 tax exemption for a 30-story building in Councilmember Eric Botcher's district. Preconsidered resolution sponsored by Councilmember Brannan would establish a new 40-year Article 11 tax exemption for 2 buildings in Councilmember Hudson's district. And 3, preconsidered resolution sponsored by Councilmember Brannan would establish new 40-year Article 11 tax exemptions for 8 buildings in Councilmember Hanks' district. Next, we'll vote on the following resolutions. Resolution 1063, sponsored by Councilmember Rita Joseph, would designate November 12th annually as Sigma Gamma Rho Day in the city of New York. Resolution 987, also sponsored by Councilmember Joseph, would declare July 26th annually as Haitian Kanpa Day to celebrate the legacy of Haitian music and dance in our city's cultural landscape. Resolution 843, sponsored by Councilmember Althea Stevens, would call on the New York State Assembly to pass and the governor to sign A 5658, A S 378, which directs the State Education Department and State Office of Children and Family Services to prepare posters and pamphlets to ensure foster youth are made aware of the higher education financial resources available to them. Resolution 251, sponsored by Councilmember Kevin Riley, would call on the State Education Department to allow a lifeguard certification to substitute for physical education credit for high school seniors aged 17 years and older. Resolution 54, sponsored by Deputy Speaker Diana Ayala, would call on the cities and states' education departments to collaborate and prioritize increasing the number of educators trained to work with English language learners and to improve the quality and comprehensiveness of their education. Resolution 469, sponsored by Councilmember Shekhar Krishnan, would recognize May 15th as International Water Safety Day. Resolution 773A, sponsored by Majority Leader Farias, would call on the New York State Legislature to pass and the governor to sign A3024, which directs the MTA to establish a student fare program for trains and buses. Resolution 498A, sponsored by Majority Leader Farias, would call on the MTA to create a program that provides first responder agencies with real-time GPS data for all MTA buses. Resolution 1016, sponsored by Majority Leader Farias, would call on the New York State Legislature to pass and the governor to sign legislation setting the minimum notice period for rent increases to 60 days for Mitchell-Lama rental and co-op residents. And Resolution 575, sponsored by Majority Leader Amanda Farias, would call on the New York State Legislature to pass and the governor to sign legislation providing for annual adjustments to the rental and carrying charges for Mitchell-Lama developments based on increases in the Consumer Price Index. These resolutions are critical to supporting the financial stability of Mitchell-Lamas and their residents. Today we'll vote on the following legislation. Introduction 1397A, sponsored by Councilmember James Gennaro, would require the Office of Long-Term Planning and Sustainability, the Department of Environmental Protection, and the Department of Buildings to conduct a study to develop construction code amendments to address stormwater flood risks. I invite Councilmember Gennaro, he's here at the podium, to discuss his legislation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Stormwater, a very emotional topic here. We're going to try something new so I don't run on like all day, because my staff said it's only 3 weeks until Christmas. They said, take this and read this, and then walk away. So we're going to try, it's never, so you can teach an old dog new tricks. Okay, Intro 1397A is the next step in the work I began last year when we passed Local Law 124 of 2024, a law that finally mapped where inland flooding is most likely to happen in New York City. Now, coastal flood areas we've been mapping for a long time, but not inland areas. As New York continues to face the growing threat of extreme weather events, we must ensure that our building codes reflect the realities of our changing climate. This bill strengthens our construction codes by added targeted protections for inland areas at risk of flooding from heavy rainfall and stormwater, beginning with common sense measures like elevating above ground fuel tanks in people's basements. In recent years, storms like Ida have made it abundantly clear that flood risk is not unique just to our shorelines. By incorporating inland flood risks into our construction rules, this bill closes a critical gap in our resilience strategy and helps protect homes, businesses, and lives from future floods. This is a common sense measure that will make New York City safer, stronger, and better prepared for the inevitable climate challenges ahead. This bill moves us forward in 3 simple but powerful ways. It brings the right city agencies together to study how we should build in areas that repeatedly flood from heavy rain. That will result in changes to the building code. It requires Department of Buildings to clearly show residents when a property is an area at high risk for inland flooding so people can make informed decisions, and it adds basic protection to our building code to make sure that above ground tanks in flood prone areas are elevated. A small but important change that can prevent big problems when streets fill with stormwater and sewer backups, may happen. We don't want the tanks getting wet. The heart of this legislation is very simple. We're using real data to protect people. We're making sure that families, homeowners, and renters aren't left vulnerable because the city failed to plan for the kind of storms we now face regularly. This bill ensures that New York City treats inland flooding with the seriousness it deserves, and that we're preparing all our neighborhoods for the climate realities of today. This is about safety, transparency, and giving New Yorkers the protections that they deserve. Now, I know this is a very emotional topic. I want to make sure everyone's okay. Everyone's okay here? Everyone's emotionally good. Okay, very good. Good to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys all okay? You okay?
We're great.
Okay, fine.
Introduction 1423A, sponsored by Councilmember Althea Stevens, would require the Department of Transportation to provide on its website an inventory of all city-owned retaining walls under their jurisdiction that are 10 feet high or greater by October 1st, 2026. Introduction 796A, also sponsored by Councilmember Stevens, would require DOB to send a monthly email to all council members and community boards, notifying them of new sidewalk shed permits that were issued during the prior month. I invite Councilmember Stevens to the podium to discuss her legislation.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I was told last time I need to look up, so just how I'm looking up. Look at that. But this light is very aggressive in my eyes, so we got to talk about this. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. And today is a powerful moment, not just for legislation moving forward, but because these bills reflect real needs and real concerns and real voices of our communities. I want to thank my colleagues, the speaker, the committee chairs, and every advocate who helped bring these bills to this point. Each of these bills that we are speaking about is something that has deepened the policy. They are spoken with dignity, they are spoken to access, and they are to bring beliefs that everyday New Yorkers deserve information, protection, and empowerment. The first piece is the Resolution 843, which urges partners in the State Assembly and Governor to sign and pass that to make sure foster care youth actually have information about financial supports and the available for college. This is really a piece of important legislation, and really want the state to consider passing this is because so many young people came to me and told me their stories about how they did not know that they had financial tools that can get them, that they could have access to go to college. And so, this is really important. And even when we had Foster Youth Shadow Day last year, some of the young people spoke about the importance of this bill and came back to testify at the hearing to say that this matters to them and they really want it to be done. So this is for all those young people that came in and spoke about the importance of this. So wanted to make sure we uplifted them in this moment. Next, Intro 796A, which provides community boards and elected officials the notice of sidewalk shed permits. Sidewalk sheds may seem like a small issue to some, but everyone who lives in our neighborhood knows the impact they have. They block sunlight. They make the streets feel less safe. They hurt our small businesses. And sometimes they sit there for years becoming part of the block without anyone knowing why. And that's the problem. People just don't know. There's no communication, no explanation, no accountability. This bill finally changes that and requires the Department of Buildings to send monthly updates to every council member and community board showing every newly issued sidewalk shed permit broken down by district along with the reason why they're installed. The final bill in this package is Intro 423, requires the Department of Transportation to provide a public inventory of all city-owned retaining walls under its jurisdiction. Retaining walls are not something people talk about every day, but they do play a major role in keeping our neighborhoods stable and secure. When retaining walls aren't maintained, they become dangerous, and we've seen so many situations where residents had no idea a wall was in bad shape until something went wrong. This is how we shift the reacting emergencies to preventing them. This is how we prevent families before danger happens. This is how we build trust by giving communities access to information that has been hidden for too long. Taken together, those two bills don't just solve problems, they shift power back to the people. Thank you again to the Speaker and my colleagues for your partnership, and thank you for our communities who give this work purpose. I am committed to centering your voices in every step of the way. Thank you.
Yeah. Introduction 1456A, sponsored by Councilmember Justin Brannan, would extend the moratorium on fines for certain awning and accessory sign violations until 2028. The Department of Buildings would also be required to conduct a public education campaign. Councilmember Brannan couldn't join us today, but we do thank him for his work on this legislation. Introduction 1425A, sponsored by Councilmember Susan Zhuang, would require the Department of Parks and Recreation to submit a quarterly report on the staffing levels of parks enforcement patrol officers and park rangers, as well as the incidents they responded to at city parks. Introduction 1217A, also sponsored by Councilmember Zhuang, would require the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to inspect buildings within 14 days of receiving 311 complaints relating to rats. I invite Councilmember Zhuang to the podium to discuss her legislation.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. And I always say our job is very interesting. Yesterday, I was responding the ICE in our district, and today I'm proud here to champion for better quality of life issue for New Yorkers. New Yorkers are on the same roller coaster ride right now. Businesses are struggling because people are afraid to shop and cannot afford to shop, but they are also dealing with violence in our parks and the rats in their homes. Safer Parks for NYC, which is Bill Intro 1425 from my team. We worked very closely with a lot of union members in DC 37, and we want to know the numbers, where the parks officers and where the parks rangers, what kind of instance the response, because there's not enough PAPA officers and park rangers in our city. This bill will allow us to see where our current staff are deployed by park and what engagement they have. We'll also learn every quarter for current staff levels. These facts need when we need to know where and where, when and where all the park rangers and park officers work. In New York City, we cannot regulate the rats, but we do able to regulate the city agencies. The bill Intro 1217, it come up with my constituents living in my district. They come, probably all my colleagues have the same issue. our constituents come to the office complain so many 311 phone calls they filed about rat issue, they never get a response. But according to Department of Health, they respond every single calls said in 9 days, average in 9 days. We want to make sure every single phone call from our constituents get a response. So this bill will regulate Department of Health to respond every single rat calls in 14 days. If they did not have access in the first attempt, they have to do another inspection in 20 days. So I want to thank all my colleagues and also speaker and every single one working so hard for this bill. And we hope New York City will be safe, healthy, and clean. Thank you.
Thank you. Introduction 1384A, sponsored by Councilmember Linda Lee, would amend the definitions of Site Safety Training Card and Site Safety Training Supervisor Card in the New York City Building Code to require that an applicant complete 2 SST credits related to mental health and wellness, suicide risk and prevention, and alcohol and substance use. I invite Councilmember Lee to the podium to discuss her legislation.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker and colleagues. Good afternoon. I just want to give a special shout out to the building trades and the unions for bringing this issue to our attention, because when you look at some of the numbers of suicide rates and opioid issues in this group, it is alarming. So every day in New York City, construction workers put on their boots, strap on their helmets, and step onto job sites that are literally building this city. And they go to work with pride, but also with risk. And we've long recognized the dangers of falling scaffolds and heavy equipment, but what we too often overlook are the invisible risks, the stress of the job, the isolation, the long hours that wear people down. Construction workers in America die by suicide at a rate of nearly 4 times the national average. Families lose loved ones, not just to accidents, but also to social and emotional stressors. We also know the opioid epidemic has not spared this industry. Too many workers have overdosed on or near their job sites. And these are not statistics, these are lives. These are empty seats at kitchen tables, children left without parents, and communities left grieving. Intro 1384, which is hopefully passing today, is about saving lives. This bill requires that site safety training include not just hard hats and harnesses, but also education on mental health, suicide prevention, and substance misuse. Because protecting workers means protecting the whole person, the body and the mind. I urge my colleagues to pass this important piece of legislation today, and these workers deserve not just our gratitude, but our action. Thank you so much, Speaker.
Thank you. Very good. Introduction 1002, sponsored by Councilmember Christy Marmorato, would require all schools to stock airway clearance devices within 180 days after they receive authorization from the FDA for use. I invite Councilmember Marmorato to the podium to discuss her important legislation.
Thank you, Speaker Adams. This is cool. This feels cool. My first time up here, so bear with me, everyone. So good afternoon, everybody. Today, I'm here to talk about Intro 1002, a bill that brings airway clearing devices to every school here in New York City. And for me, this is something that hits close to home because I did have a family member who passed away from choking after a failed Heimlich maneuver. It was a devastating loss to my family. Now, in the United States, at least 1 child dies from choking on food every 5 days, and 1 is too many, and that number is heartbreaking. And especially as a mom, a working mother who has to send their child to school, I knew that stronger safeguards needed to be set in place to protect not only my child, but every child here in New York City. So Intro 1002 does that exactly, and ensures that every school in New York City is equipped with an airway clearing device after the device receives authorization from the FDA. And proper training for emergency staff has been complete. This device will serve as a critical second line of defense when the Heimlich maneuver isn't enough, giving our children and school staff an extra layer of protection when seconds matter most. And the best part of this legislation, it's not going to cost the city anything. A company has already committed to donating airway clearing devices to every single school once the bill has been passed and implemented. And that truly is a win for not only our children, but for our city. And this is about protecting our children, easing our parents' fears, and giving our schools the tools they need to save lives every day. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You know, Councilmember Marmorato is one who has successfully performed the Heimlich maneuver many years ago on a former coworker. I can't tell you how important this is. Thank you very much. Okay. Introduction 1154A, sponsored by Councilmember Julie Menin, would require DOT to test high visibility pavement markings that could be more visible to road users in poor driving conditions. Introduction 895A, also sponsored by Councilmember Menin, would require all schools and DOHMH regulated child care facilities to keep EpiPens on site. And Introduction 1225A, also sponsored by Councilmember Menin, would establish an office of the census. I invite Councilmember Menin to the podium to discuss her legislation. All of them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Speaker, and I really want to thank you for your leadership in moving not only these bills, but all of the colleagues' bills. It's really so great to see. So I'm only going to talk about two of the bills. First of all, the Office of the Census. I served as a 2020 Census Director, and what this new bill does is it creates a permanent Office of the Census so that when the census is occurring, we are not left scrambling as we were in 2020. We know right now that House Republicans are trying to add a citizenship question once again to the census. So even though we successfully sued the Trump administration and got the citizenship question off the census, they're trying that again. And when that coupled with ICE raids and everything we're seeing in the city, it's more important than ever that we start the work around the census now, that we get money out to trusted community groups who can help to ensure that every single New Yorker is counted and that New York gets its fair share of dollars and representation. And then the second bill that I'm incredibly proud about is this EpiPen bill, which is going to require EpiPens at every single school and child care facility across the city of New York. As the mother of a food allergic child, I almost lost my son when he was 2 from anaphylactic shock, and it was only an EpiPen that saved his life. And so having these life-saving EpiPens at every child care facility and school across the city is going to save lives. So thank you so much to the Speaker for moving these bills forward.
Thank you. What a time we had during the census, during the pandemic, in the sense. Next, we'll vote on several bills intended to strengthen the city's water safety efforts. Introduction 1059A, sponsored by Councilmember Shekhar Krishnan, would require the Parks Department to develop and publish information about water safety and drowning prevention. They would also be required to distribute written materials to every student. Introduction 1058A, sponsored by Councilmember Shekhar Krishnan, would require the Parks Department and the DOE to conduct a feasibility study on how high school students could be prepared to train to become lifeguards at city-managed beaches and pools. And Introduction 988A, also sponsored by Councilmember Krishnan, would require the Parks Department to create an online map that provides up-to-date information about swimming pools under its jurisdiction. I now invite Councilmember Krishnan to the podium to discuss his important legislation.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Speaker Adams. I'm proud to be here today to celebrate a slate of bills that we are passing today as a part of my water safety package. One drowning death in this city is too many. Unfortunately, we've had many in the last 5-10 years alone. We must do everything we can to ensure that our children and our communities have the education and resources they need to stay safe. My legislation addresses multiple angles for solutions: educating our students about drowning, creating a Parks Department website with a map of when pools are open, developing a study with the Parks Department and the Department of Education so we can train and develop young people to become lifeguards, creating a junior lifeguard corps in our high schools, and recognizing May 15th as International Water Safety Day. I'm proud that my legislation is tackling the issue with a multifaceted approach, ensuring safe swimming is more accessible and that we do everything we can to prevent drowning deaths in the city. It is a crisis and it's affecting some communities far more than others. But last year alone, we had more drownings in one summer than we've had in the last 7 years. It tells you the point that we are at in the city and how we have to take water safety far more seriously. I also want to recognize a land use action that Speaker Adams mentioned and that is expected to pass today. As chair of the Parks Department and representing the district with the least amount of green space in all of New York City, the Walk to the Park initiative in neighborhoods that are park starved from East New York to Jackson Heights is critical to me. I'm confident that we'll provide immediate pathways to increase green space in neighborhoods like my own, starting with both of those that I mentioned. That includes the opportunity for the Parks Department to put a bid in the green space that's up for sale right now that the Episcopal Diocese of Long Island is looking to sell in Jackson Heights, one of literally 2 plots of green space that we have in the entire neighborhood. What is currently a children's playground and play yard for multiple early childhood education programs is up for sale to the highest bidder. This legislation gives the Parks Department the authorization to expedite purchasing land from an owner who wants to sell it and cuts government red tape and bureaucracy that often makes the process much slower. We hope to utilize that in Jackson Heights and in neighborhoods like mine around the city where we need to create or save green space where otherwise would not exist. I'm proud that our council is taking this critical step to make our city greener and our swimming pools and beaches safer. Thank you so much, Speaker Adams.
Thank you. Very nice. Okay. Introduction 1392A, sponsored by myself, would require quarterly payments to contractors under certain contracts with the Department of Homeless Services and the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice beginning July 1st, 2027, and establish a pilot program for quarterly payments for other contracts. This bill is a part of the Council's larger efforts to reform our city's contracting processes to address long-standing delays that have hampered nonprofit services, operations, and long-term stability. I invite myself to come to, I'm just kidding. Finally, we will be overriding mayoral vetoes of 4 bills that respectively protect CityFEPS recipients from rent increases and ensure they are not overly rent burdened, advance pay equity, and improve city contracting. Let me be clear. There is no New York without working people. It is our responsibility as government to ensure that all New Yorkers can lead lives with dignity, opportunity, and safety. That requires affordable rents, pay equity for people of color and women, and city contracting functions effectively to allow nonprofits to focus on serving New Yorkers. This city council has remained steadfast in protecting New Yorkers and putting their interests first. Today is just another example of our commitment. We will override mayoral vetoes of the following bills. Introduction 1372, sponsored by Deputy Speaker Diana Ayala, would require that rent contributions for CityFEPS recipients do not exceed 30% of the household's monthly income. Introduction 982A, sponsored by Councilmember Tiffany Caban, would require private employers with more than 200 employees working in the city to submit a paid data report. Introduction 984A, sponsored by Majority Leader Amanda Farias, would require an agency to conduct an annual pay equity study on private employers with 200 or more employees. And Introduction 1248B, sponsored by myself, would codify an Office of Contract Services, who would serve as the City Chief Procurement Officer. And this concludes our stated agenda. With that, we'll take on topic questions on the bill subject to votes today. Nothing on the overrides? I thought you guys would be like jumping. Kelly.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask you, I feel like this is like override again with Mayor Adams.
Right.
He just got back from Louisiana.
Oh, is he back?
Yes.
Oh, breaking news.
What does this mean? I feel like you guys are still in this pattern of just not getting along, having to do this overrides.
Well, I don't think it's a quote unquote not getting along. All right. This council, like I just said, has been steadfast in working for the people of the city of New York, particularly for the least of these and the most underserved populations of this city. It's unfortunate that the mayor kind of abdicates his responsibility to working people, particularly with this legislation that we're going to override today. That said, too, we're still in the 30-day override period. And, of course, we look forward to this override. It's just unfortunate that, once again, we have come to this point in time, but the council will deliver for the people of the city.
And then I just wanted to follow up because Randy Masters, first deputy mayor, said that in particular, I believe it's your bill on the contracting and creating this new office. He said that this is really a power struggle. That legislation trying to take power away from the mayor's office, that he already has an office for contracting. I mean, what's your response to that? I feel like that there has been back and forth with other legislative maneuvers when it comes to this power struggle between that side of City Hall and this side.
Well, power struggle is interesting coming from that individual, but I would direct for the first deputy to the numerous contracts that to individuals that have gone unpaid for such a long time, and other things as well. So I believe that this legislation, this office is necessary because of the work that has not been done by the mayoral administration. Once again, this council has been that check on the administration to make sure that contracts are handled appropriately, that nonprofits are paid appropriately, and anything else that it takes to make sure that New Yorkers are okay.
Other on-topic questions? Bob, is it on topic?
It is not.
Are we surprised? We are not.
Off-topic questions?
Yes.
I'll come back.
Thank you. So, Speaker,
Yes, sir.
the city, Gwen Hogan, had a very compelling story that moved December 2nd. ICE arrested and separated Chinese father from 6-year-old son, Advocacy, and it was an account just up the road a piece where the ICE took this man and evidently the child, and we still today don't know.
Disappeared them.
About, the council member mentioned this. This seems to be doubling down. It's not going away. The union representing the immigration judges just talked about summary firing of 7 veteran immigration judges. What is going on, and what can the council do, or people of conscience do?
You know, it's heartbreaking to continue to talk about this, number one, to see now the escalation of this of this activity continuing in this city, the city with the most population of immigrants, I believe, in the nation. Well, what the council can do, the council can continue to fight in behalf of immigrants, in behalf of the children that are literally being pulled from their schools. This 6-year-old should be going to class right now, where he wants to be, by the way. It is deplorable that that this administration still prefers cruelty over kindness, which to me is basically what this boils down to, and moving people that have committed no violent act, people that only want to make a living here in this country, which we claim to be the best country in the world, which I still proclaim this country to be, is truly, truly a sad time. But what I will say is that we need to continue to fight for fellow New Yorkers as New Yorkers, and that is my hope that this council will continue to do.
As a quick follow-up, at a certain point when a child can't be accounted for, why isn't DA Bragg and the considerable power of the NYPD and their investigative capability being put to use?
Best question asked for DA Bragg and those others that you just mentioned, Bob.
Members?
Thank you, colleagues. See you at work in a few minutes.
Guys, we're going to continue on topic. Other questions? Sophia?
Extend.
Hi. Yeah.
So a coalition of groups, including the Environmental Justice Alliance and the Tri-State Transportation Campaign, sent you a letter before the Thanksgiving break urging you to hold a vote on Intro 1396, which is also known as the Delivery Protection Act, that has 39 co-sponsors before the end of the year. I'm curious what specifically you're considering about that bill when it comes to whether or not you're going to bring it for a vote before the end of the year. What are you weighing, and where are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, thank you for the question. That bill, like a lot of others, takes a lot of negotiation and deliberation. So those things are still going on. I typically don't weigh in on legislation that we're still negotiating, and that bill is one of them. So all I can say is we're continuing, and our answer is always still going through the legislative process. We continue to do that, and we'll see what happens. Yeah, thank you.
Say your name.
Hi, Gabby.
I have a really similar question about COPA and compliance.
About COPA?
COPA, the community opportunity.
No, I know what it is. Oh, I just want to make sure that you were saying that I was hearing you that I was hearing you correctly. Again, and it's the same answer. It's still deliberately going through the process. And a lot of folks say that we just say things just to say them, but when we're dealing with complex matters, we have to negotiate these things to make sure that we get it right, and that for all intents and purposes we are getting it as right as we possibly can. So it's going through the legislative process, and we're going to see what happens with it. Yeah. Hi.
I'm Farina.
Hi, Farina. Always.
Independent Drivers Guild.
Yeah.
Specifically, there's drivers from the Independent Drivers Guild who are here protesting about, or here to comment about the protection for deactivation of Lyft drivers.
Yep.
Is there a reason that also wasn't voted on today?
Same. It's the same answer. When you see bills that aren't being moved, and some would say, I'll just put that in the time frame that some would like to see things moved a lot faster, it's usually because there are many more conversations that are in process or that have to be had before we can get legislation right. Yeah, great questions, though. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.